Well, welcome back to the New News Podcast. It's welcome to 2024. It's a brand new year. The podcast is coming up on a year old. I haven't been around that long, but Sandy, Andrew, you guys have been carrying the torch. We're into 2024 now. Andrew, or wow, I called you Andrew. At least I'm not calling you Sunny this time. How are you feeling about the new year? Are you excited about the Cardinal season, content, all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm super excited to be getting into 2024. I think the Cardinals are going to be better this year. Just to start, I think they're going to win more than 71 games. Fingers crossed. But also, I'm really excited to do another year of the Newt News podcast. It was such a blessing last year. Honestly, couldn't have imagined that it would have gone as well as it did. And all the support's been just really exciting, overwhelming. Very thankful for it. I can't wait to see where we are heading into 2025.
Yeah, it's honestly been so cool to be a part of this. And so I'm grateful for you guys for inviting me onto it. And I'm just really excited to see kind of what comes from everything this year. We had a little bit of things go down over the last few weeks in baseball. We haven't really been that active. We've posted different clips from our charity live stream, and then we've also did a all-time draft breakdown, so you can go check that out on our channel. But Sandy, how are you kind of feeling about like the Reds made a few moves, the Braves made a move for Chris Sale? Obviously, we're going to get into some Cardinals trade ideas here in a moment, but there were some significant transactions in the National League.
Yes.
How do you feel like this is kind of like stacking up for the Cardinals right now? What does this mean for the market as a whole?
Yeah, so the pitching market has started to move. As we kind of thought, Yamamoto signing has unclogged it a little bit. You've seen some other major dominoes fall. Frankie Montas goes to the Reds. That's really tough. He's a guy that I really liked. I've talked about him a number of times on here. I think he's a good bounce back candidate. But also, like, the deal he got's a big deal, right? 1 year, $16 million. That's not the AAV I would have wanted him on. So I understand why the Cardinals didn't go after him. Hopefully he's not very good in Cincinnati. That's all I can say about that. The Sale deal is really, really interesting. It feels like a salary dump for Boston, but for Atlanta, you never know. They might have just found gold. He's a guy that's at his peak, at least better than anybody available on the market right now. But the question is, at 34, can he recapture that? And no one's sure. So it'll be really interesting. Some people I've heard compare it to the Kluber deal, which is a guy who is out of his prime, kind of a salary dump, goes to another team, and he's just not the same guy anymore. But, you know, you never know. Everything the Braves touch turns to gold these days. So, yeah, it's been an interesting week coming out of Christmas. Hopefully it picks up a little more. I'd like to see the relief market start moving soon because I think that's where the Cardinals are going to be most active.
Yeah, I agreed on that. And I feel like the Sale thing was kind of like in the big picture was a lose-lose when you look at like Cardinal fans and how they look at it. Because like if the Cardinals had traded for Chris Sale, I really don't think fans would be all that excited about it. But it's the fact that the Braves went and did it. Now people are really upset about it. Like you talked last year. I mean, some people are really high on Chris Sale. So some people would say 2 months ago they should have done it. But a lot of people are kind of out on it. And again, like it could work out, but also the Red Sox ate a lot of money and the Braves gave a significant piece in return to get Sale because of that. And so I've seen people say, oh, the Cardinals missed on trading Tyler O'Neill for Chris Sale. And it's like, I don't think that's true. I don't think the Tyler O'Neill for Chris Sale is going to work.
Yeah.
And also like they got interesting bullpen arms back in return, which was what the Cardinals are looking for. I mean, maybe there's a way that the Red Sox are interested in O'Neill and maybe don't eat as much salary on Chris Sale to make it happen. But also they were going after Yamamoto at the time. So like the people's like just same deals that are available 2 months ago, 1 month ago aren't necessarily the deals that are available today, and vice versa. There's players that become more available later on. So like clearly the reports out of Boston are they're trying to move off of money to go bring in certain guys. They're willing to maybe extend themselves for Yamamoto, but they're not necessarily going to go break the luxury tax when going after Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell. So I don't think that was really true. So I'm not really mad that the Cardinals didn't get Sale. Like there's a chance that Sale pitches 50 innings this year and no one really cares what happened with that. And the Braves have a shaky rotation because their top two is great, but then you've got Charlie Morton, Chris Sale, and you've got Bryce Elder. And I mean, their farm system's really thin now. So I'm not really complaining if I'm a Cardinal fan. The Frankie Montas deal, again, is a one that if they didn't go after Lance Lynn or Kyle Gibson and they needed 2 more starters, I'd be interested in, but now I'm not interested in. So good for the Reds. Not really what the Cardinals needed to do. And then in general, like the market's just not moving. Like just it's Christmas, it's New Year's, things don't really happen. So
Yeah.
I would expect January 2nd on to be when the rumor mill starts to pop up, and then
I
the
hope
next
so.
few weeks or so. Also, I noticed as you were talking, I left one of those Troy Tulowitzki. I was trying out our format for a thing later, so you might have seen a weird Troy Tulowitzki trade up on this the stage for a little bit there. My bad. But again, like we're talking Cardinals here. That's what you guys want to talk about here. My Sandy and I put together 3 different trade ideas, and maybe you have more. I have one extra off the wall one that I'll throw in here. And we want to take some of your trade ideas as we go through too. But obviously, it seems like the primary way the Cardinals can make a major upgrade this offseason outside of a bullpen arm is via the trade market, which is also a place that could get a bullpen arm, but they're probably not going to go out and sign a significant starting rotation arm.
Yeah, it's just not gonna
Highly doubt they signed a position player unless it's a depth move.
Yeah, no.
So we're kind of looking at the trade market here, and obviously we've talked ad nauseum about a lot of this already. So a lot of these names aren't going to really surprise you. But then again, Chris Sale just got traded, and that wasn't really on the books. And so there's a potential that things happen, especially the RSN uncertainty. Maybe there's some clubs that decide to move off some players that they didn't really want to. Again, maybe as the pitching market moves on, there's some guys that become available, or it's the guys that we have been talking about. So we're going to throw out a trade idea. We'll present it to the other person. The other person will kind of give it like a grade and how much it makes sense and would they do it, would they not do it. We'll kind of go back and forth. But as we're going through too, we want to hear your ideas. We'll grade those and talk about those as well as we're going through. So Sandy, I'll lead us off. I'll kind of go chalk here. And again, we might have some of the same players.
Sure, yeah.
So if we do, you can type yours in and we could throw it up too and kind of debate back and forth. This has been one that's been talked about for a long time now. So not really scaring anyone or not really surprising you with this one. I think my next 3 though, like second one's kind of been talked about recently, but it's kind of a newer one. And then 2 that not necessarily people are really looking at right now. So the first one I want to throw out to everyone and throw out to Sandy is a Dylan Cease trade.
Good.
Again, I don't really know if this is possible to pull off, but it's kind of where I draw the line a little bit right now. I'll explain. So in this scenario, I have the Cardinals getting Dylan Cease, and they have to give up Thomas to JC, basically the Jordan Montgomery package, plus Gordon Graceffo and Alec Burleson. So if you're watching on YouTube, again, you can see it on the screen right now. If you're one of our audio listeners, I have the Cardinals receiving Dylan Cease for Thomas to JC, Tekoa Roby, Gordon Graceffo, and Alec Burleson. Obviously, you're giving up 2 significant prospects in terms of Thomas JC and Tekoa Roby.
Yeah.
I could see the White Sox needing Tink Hence instead of Tekoa Roby here, but I decided to maybe barter him down a little bit and they give a more significant 3rd piece in Gordon Graceffo here and 4th piece in Alec Burleson rather than kind of some lower end prospects. So for the White Sox here, they cash in on Dylan Cease and they get 4 different guys who could be major league contributors in the next 2 to 3 years. One of them will already be one in Alec Burleson. Thomas JC should be at some point this year. Gordon Graceffo maybe, but more so in 2025, and same with Tekoa Roby. They're going to want pitching in return. They're not just going to want bats. So you get 2 arms. You also get 2 bats that I think could be really interesting. Alec Burleson could be a well above average league hitter in his prime. Obviously, we've seen what Thomas JC could do this last year and is a really interesting bat. From the Cardinals' perspective, you don't have to give up Nolan Gorman. You don't have to give up Brendan Donovan.
Yeah.
And you trade from a surplus, I think, here. Obviously, you don't really I don't love the idea of giving up Thomas JC, but at some point, you got to give up talent to get talent.
I agree.
Position the Cardinals put themselves in. And then Tekoa Roby and Gordon Graceffo, obviously, it's weird to trade pitching to get pitching, but like teams want pitching in return, so you're going to have to give up some arms, and I'm more comfortable giving up Roby and Graceffo when I'm getting Dylan Cease back. Would the White Sox do this? I'm not totally sure on that.
They would.
Yeah.
It's tough. I just think a lot of teams, they call the Cardinals, and whether the Cardinals are interested in it or not, they say, give me Donovan or Gorman. And it's tough, right? When you have assets like they have. And I think the Mariners run into a similar problem with their young pitching. I don't think teams are willing to make deals with the Mariners unless one of those young arms is included. And I think it's the same way with the Cardinals. I just can't see a team giving us a big piece and not expecting Donovan or Gorman back. It's
Yeah.
so tough. And that's the problem you run into because as a Cardinals fan, you don't want to see either of those guys out the door. I think if you're going to move somebody or like, acquire somebody without giving them up, you probably do have to include Sajazi and at least one, maybe two of the high ceiling pitching prospects. And so you've got that framework. It's a really interesting deal. I think I'd probably pull the trigger on that, which like I hate to say because I would hate to see all that talent walk out. But
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, if you've got I don't know if one of yours is Cease or not, but if so, definitely throw that one out there next. But if not, if you want to go ahead and type it up and get it ready, we can move into yours next. But kind of where I started to talk myself into the idea that it could work out for them to go after Cease without giving up Gorman or Donovan is kind of the fact that, one, they're not as desperate as they used to be. So,
Yeah.
like last offseason, Oakland A's knew they were desperate for a catcher, so they asked for the moon. They overplayed their hand, so the Cardinals went to get Contreras. The White Sox are not overplaying their hand asking for Gorman or Donovan, so they're not. That's not necessarily totally fair to compare, but I do think it's a factor here. The other thing is I don't really know what the market is for Dylan Cease. Like the Dodgers, but at the same time, like I don't know for sure if they're going to pull the trigger in something like that because they can't. I mean, they could spend a ton of money, but at some point they need to continue.
Yeah.
Like the reason they're able to sustain success is having some young players coming up, and they have a treasure trove of them. So yes, they could do it. Are they going to do it? I'm not sure. I don't see the Braves being able to pull this off. The Reds and the Orioles have the ammunition to do it, but are either team going to do it? I don't really think so. So that's where I kind of think this could somewhat fall into the Cardinals' lap of like it's still a high price, but it's not the end all be all that we kind of thought going into it. And this also I think could potentially be a framework at the trade deadline. Because I wouldn't be mad if the Cardinals don't make a trade for a starting pitcher before the season if it ends up happening later in the season. I think they can. This is what I thought last year, and it didn't work out. But I feel better about it this year. I think they can make it to the trade deadline with the staff they have, barring like a ton of injuries, and then they go out and get that guy. And by that point, Dylan Cease's value is even lower because you're getting a season and a half of him, not two full seasons. So that's where I kind of think like that. I didn't really say this at the beginning, but I purposely, there's only one deal I included Gorman or Donovan in. I'm purposely not trading either of them because I kind of like I talked about my 10 bull predictions I posted today on the site actually for Redbird Rants. You can go check that out there. I just think by the trade deadline, we're going to have a much better idea of what this young core looks like. And so are other teams.
Yes.
And so I like, as high as I am on Thomas Sajazi, we
might not need him.
Yeah, we might not need him because Donovan and Gorman might just totally ascend here.
Yeah.
But what if they trade Donovan and he's great and Sajazi isn't who we think he is?
Yeah.
Like there's just, and what if Dylan Carlson pops off? What if Victor Scott pops off? What if both of those guys don't pop off? What if Lars Nootbaar is incredible? What if he's not? There's a lot of what ifs with this team. And you could play the game of let's sell high right now and maybe they don't work out for someone else, but you might get bit in the butt with that. I think you make the deal if it makes sense right now, but if it doesn't, I'm not desperate to do it. So that's where I'm, especially for Dylan Cease, I'm not giving up Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan as things currently stand. I don't know. Maybe the bidding got to the point and they were like, hey, we're about to trade him to the Dodgers. Either give me Donovan or Gorman or it's not going to work out. Maybe I changed my opinion, but assuming he's not going to be moved right away, I'm kind of sitting back and saying those two are off the table.
Yeah. I think I'm with you. The thing, like I've seen a lot of people, Kevin just put that in the chat. He said, quit with we can't trade Donovan for a top flight pitcher. I understand the sentiment here, but the reason I'm so hesitant to trade Donovan or Gorman is because they're not prospects. They're proven major league hitters. Like we know Brendan Donovan is a good hitter at the big league level. He's done it twice now. He's had 2 really good seasons, 2 seasons where he's a guy that's flirting with like a 375 on base percentage against big league pitching. And he's young and he could get better and he's adding power. Like these are all things that are super encouraging. And it's like, he's already established. And Gorman just did it. And he was awesome. Like everybody who watched Nolan Gorman last year knew he was special. And it's like these guys, they're not just prospects anymore. They are proven big league hitters. They are professional hitters. And it's just really hard to part with that talent.
Yep. And I just to add to that really quick, I'm kind of stealing my own thunder a little bit for one of my stories tomorrow, but I kind of looked at who should be the Cardinals leadoff hitter next year. Brendan Donovan in 232 plate appearances last year, or sorry, in 206 plate appearances leading off against right-handed pitching last year, had a 135 WRC plus.
So good.
And then he had, which would be the 13th best WRC plus in all of baseball if you put that over an entire season. And then I don't know if it's in here. I'll have to find it later, but he was incredible from late May through July. Yeah, it's not in here, so I'll have to find it later. I think he's like 135, about that same number again. I just think we're really underrating what Brendan Donovan is, and I think he's the perfect leadoff hitter for this team. Kevin, you make a good point. Victor Scott could be that perfect leadoff hitter too at some point, but I'm not in a rush to move Brendan Donovan. I might feel differently about that at the trade deadline, but or next offseason, but I'm not letting the White Sox hold me over to the fire with it. And so Brendan Donovan's he's not untouchable, but considering I also would have to give up other things with Brendan. Like if it's Brendan Donovan for Dylan C straight up,
probably do that.
You kind of have to do that, I think. Yeah. But you only have 2 years of control of Cease. You have 4 years or 5 years more of control of Donovan. Yep. I can't remember if you got, or I think it'd be 4 years more of control, which is a lot. Left-handed bat. He's progressing with power too. He plays all the positions. He can fill him anywhere.
Really good player.
Really good player.
Yeah.
So, and I also think he's kind of worth more to the team he's on than he is to the team he's being traded to. So I think you kind of, anyways, we can move on. We've beat that horse dead for a while. And I'm sure we'll talk more Donovan as we go, but
yeah, there'll definitely be more Donovan chatter. But my first trade proposal, I'm going to send it in right here. I've been toying with this all day.
Okay.
It's tough. I've been moving some pieces around. It's pretty similar here in the sense that I'm looking to acquire a top flight starter, and I don't want to give up Donovan and Gorman. So I'm moving some stuff around. But here I've got the Cardinals going after Jesus Luzardo from Miami. And then Dane Myers is a depth center fielder. He reached the bigs last year. He's not very good. But if they trade Tommy Edman, they need somebody to be able to fill in at some point before Scott comes up. I think Myers could do it for a month, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But I think we'd be sending Tommy Edman, Thomas Sajazi, Tink Hence, and Sem Robersa. And I think here, Sajazi is the type of hitter that Miami hasn't been able to develop in forever. I think that's very, very valuable to that franchise. And we've heard that there was a framework coming together for a Luzardo deal before with Pasquantino from the Royals. And so if that was being talked about, I think that Sajazi is not where Pasquantino is because Pasquantino's done it at the big league level, but I think Sajazi's ceiling is every bit as high as his. And by adding so much high ceiling pitching, Tink Hence, and then Robersa, who I think is underrated in the Cardinals system. There's a reason he's like a top 7 prospect for us. There's a reason he was so highly regarded coming over from the Blue Jays. He was a big get for the Cardinals. He's good. He's better than Kloffenstein, I think, at least ceiling wise. He could easily be the 3 in a big league rotation at some point. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I think this is a trade the Cardinals would definitely pull the trigger on. I'm not sure Miami does it, which is why I'd totally be willing to say, okay, if not Edman, Mason Wynn. But I think this is what you'd lead with. I think there's a chance that this could get it. Might not be enough though. Luzardo, like his value, like a lot of other guys this offseason, has increased as the offseason's gone on. I feel like if you were talking about this in September, people would have said, yeah, sure. Like I'd do that. I think a lot of Marlins fans would have been interested. And it's been Luzardo to the moon. I've heard people saying that he's a better pitcher than Logan Gilbert now, which I'm like, Gilbert's the type of guy that people say you have to throw Walker in to get him now. And so it's like, man, I kind of wonder, but I think this is something the Cardinals would be able to put together at least. And like, if you have to upgrade to Mason Wynn, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you in terms of this is a painful package to give up, but I think it's worth it for the Cardinals. I think it's good value for the Marlins, but I don't think it's what they need. So that's where I kind of go off on it. Whereas like Thomas Sajazi could be that a really helpful bat for them in the near future, but I think they're looking for certainty when it comes to that, and they're probably looking for power right now. And
it's Gorman. It has to they want Gorman. Miami calls, and they say if we don't get Gorman, we're hanging up the phone.
Yeah. So I think this is maybe where we talk about how much we value Luzardo, because I actually am in the camp that I would value Luzardo over Logan Gilbert right now. My thing is, I think I I'm more easily convinced that Jesus Luzardo is a guy who's going to be a Cy Young contender than I am Logan Gilbert. Like, I think Logan Gilbert is like a really, really good number 2
I agree.
at his peak. I just don't see him as the guy.
But like
Jesus Luzardo, I could.
floor. Logan Gilbert's floor is so high. I just don't think there's a world in which Logan Gilbert is like not at least a mid-rotation arm, even in 5 years. Like, I think there's a world in which Jesus Luzardo looks like Carlos Martinez, where I'm not saying he has the off-the-field drama that Martinez has. I don't know any of that. But Jesus Luzardo, like, I don't know. He had so much trouble with Oakland when he first came up, to the point where like Miami kind of got him for pennies on the dollar. So I don't know. It's so tough. But the other thing is Luzardo this good, or is it offseason hype? And like, I never want to fall into that trap where I think like the Dodgers fell into that trap with Yamamoto. Yamamoto's really good, but offseason hype made him go from a guy who we were talking about 180 to a guy where we're talking about 330. That's crazy. Yeah. And is Luzardo the same thing?
I personally think the Luzardo thing is just people were kind of slow to the hype. I also think too, the other part of it is I think people were maybe like, I remember hearing people say Luzardo, maybe not to this degree in terms of value, but then also immediately being like, well, Sandy Alcantara just got hurt.
Yeah.
And so like they can't trade Luzardo because he's their clear cut ace right now, even though Yuri Perez probably could fall into that too, but it's probably a little early.
He's going to be really good.
So I think that's kind of where the hesitancy was. And then I've heard the chatter pick up after the Vinny Pasquantino stuff came out, because it's like, okay, well, they're actually willing to deal him. So like, let's think about it. You look at his ERA plus over the last 2 years, it was 124 2 years ago, 125 this past year. And his FIP has been right around the same as his ERA. So it's not like it's unsustainable what he's doing. And you could probably argue that he's actually going to be getting better. 3.58 ERA, 209 strikeouts in 178 2/3 innings.
That's the kicker. So he has crazy strikeout stuff.
He's got the strikeout stuff, and Logan Gilbert doesn't. He's a very average strikeout guy, which I think people don't really think. Like, sometimes I think people think Logan Gilbert is an ace right now.
He's not. He's not.
The reason he's going to cost so much in a trade is because of all the years of control. Jesus Luzardo also has an extra year of control compared to Dylan Cease. So that's where I like the 3 years of control. And again, Logan Gilbert has 4 years of control. So that's what also inflates his value a little bit.
Yeah.
We can keep talking yours. I will throw out my Luzardo trade. I did Nolan Gorman.
Oh, and I don't want to do it.
I honestly don't know if I do the trade, but this is what I think.
I think Miami says yes.
This is for sure the line I draw. I don't know if I actually do it though.
Yeah.
Like, I think, and let me just explain. Nolan Gorman, I think we both agree, is the guy Miami would want.
Yes.
He's the profile. The Cardinals have Brendan Donovan. They have Thomas JC. The more I've thought about how they're going to structure their lineup, Brendan Donovan should be the leadoff guy, and I think Lars Newbark could bat third for you. So you're losing your 6-hole hitter right now, probably. That's painful because your lineup could be elite with Nolan Gorman as your 6-hole hitter. Again, maybe it's Lars Newbark, maybe it's Brendan Donovan. Okay, whatever. But I really think Luzardo is going to pop off, and I think by this time next year, well, there's a chance. Obviously, I think Nolan Gorman's gonna be great too. I think this time next year, people aren't going to think it would be crazy right now to give up Nolan Gorman as people would say.
Well, that's if Nolan Gorman doesn't go out and hit 45 home runs next year.
True. Yeah. So
he totally could.
That's the difficulty of it, because he also could have back issues, or he also could just kind of be the same, or he also could hit 30 home runs, but be a 222, 30 hitter guy. And it's like, that's valuable, but like not an ace valuable.
Yeah, it's
like,
not insane. Yeah.
So that's where it gets really tough. Now, this is where I kind of like the framework, is that I don't think if you give up Nolan Gorman, you have to give up a ton more on top of him. And then I also kind of think, like, I love Zach Thompson. I think he would have a valuable role next year, but long term, I don't think he's one of the guys they're hoping will be a rotation arm.
Correct.
And I think for Miami, then you also get back a capable rotation arm for this year, or at least rotation depth / bullpen. So I think it makes sense for them, where you're kind of replacing, you're not replacing Luzardo, but you're getting some of that big league depth back, and then you're getting Nolan Gorman. Yeah. That's where I think this framework makes a lot of sense to me for both sides. Again, right now I say no.
What the line is, like, I really
I don't think I push the line right now, because I think maybe you could pull off Dylan Cease without having to do this.
Yes.
But right now, I'm more willing to say yes to Nolan Gorman and Jesus Luzardo because of the extra year of control
Yeah.
I am in Dylan Cease. So
I'd much rather have Luzardo than Cease. Like, if I got to choose, of course, we saw Cease like still have great strikeout stuff and not prevent runs at an elite level last year. And
yeah.
like, if Dylan Cease was on the Cardinals last year, how much better would they really have been? I don't think they would have been that much better. A little bit better for sure. He would have given you a lot more certainty, a lot of innings, but like he was pretty similar to Kyle Gibson in terms of actual production last year. I'm not saying they're the same pitcher. He's much better than Kyle Gibson. I'm not pretending that I'd rather have Gibson, but in terms of like how
You heard
many
it here
innings
first.
they gave you, how many innings they gave you, and how many runs they actually allowed, it's pretty similar.
Yeah. So again, for our audio listeners, my proposal here would have been Jesus Luzardo for going to St. Louis and Miami getting Nolan Gorman and Zach Thompson in return. Again, I don't necessarily think I would do this deal right now. I'm probably like 55, 60% no, 35 or 45, 40% yes on it right now, kind of how I feel about it. But again, if the Cardinals are gonna get someone of that caliber, it's gonna cost. And unfortunately, the White Sox are like the only team in baseball right now that is like a rebuilding team that has an ace to trade. Most of the other ones, they're gonna want like ready now bats.
Yeah.
So
Like the Tigers aren't moving Scooble.
yeah, like Scooble would be awesome, but the
But he's
Tigers
not
aren't
going
doing that.
anywhere. Yeah. And they
No.
might not even need anything that we have besides Gorman and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know if you have another trade cooked up yet already.
Yeah. I'm
okay.
staying in Miami actually.
Oh,
I know Miami just has so many interesting young starters. And so my next trade, I'm moving Tommy Edman and I'm moving Sem Reversa, and I'm seeing if I can bring in Max Meyer.
okay.
Max Meyer is a guy who, like, I'm still sky high on. I don't know how the rest of the league feels about him, though. He's had some really scary injuries. He was out for most of the season, made his debut. It wasn't great, got hurt almost instantly, long injury track record. And at this point, I don't know how the Marlins view him. I don't think they think he's going to have a rotation spot next year. Like,
Yeah.
I think to the Marlins, he's a guy where it's like, it's like the Cardinals thought about Tyler O'Neill this year, where it's like, okay, if he's really good, that's great. That's what we need. But how much longer does the Max Meyer experience last before we're done? And so I think that could be a really interesting trade. Yeah, I'll type that out. Sorry, real quick.
Yeah. So say the pieces again for me. I'm just processing.
I've got St. Louis receives Max Meyer. Miami receives Tommy Edman and Sem Reversa.
Man, that's interesting.
I think like I'm tempted to go higher ceiling pitching arm or like a better pitching arm, but it's like, honestly, Meyer's floor is nothing. So I wonder, do the Marlins, can they get more? Like, I don't think they can command a Gordon Graceffo because there's a chance Meyer never pitches.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where I actually, I'm kind of just processing right now how I feel about it. I think, like you said, the ceiling's there, but there like is a non-existent floor, as in like it's an abyss that he could fall into.
Yeah.
I
maybe you could add another like Trevor Rogers or something, because I think Miami would move him too for Tommy Edman. It's tough.
Yeah, I think I just don't think I would give up Edman in this deal if I'm the Cardinals. I guess it's with the uncertainty, especially with Wynn, even though I think we all agree he's going to be like a capable starting shortstop this next year, but like there's a chance he needs to sit a little bit, or if an injury happens, you just don't have shortstop depth right now. I mean, JC could be that, but also defensively, probably not the guy you want there. And Edman right now is the center fielder, even though I feel like Victor Scott can take that, and I could also see Dylan Carlson doing that.
Yeah.
I just think you could probably get more certainty for Edman here, and it's maybe not quite the ceiling of Max Meyer, but maybe below it with a lot more certain, at least a lot higher of a floor. I don't know. It just scares me.
Dominant at the minor league level. Like his minor league stuff, he missed all of last year, but in 2022, in 2021, he had over 100 innings, a 2.41 ERA. In 2022, before his injury, which knocked him out for the rest of the year, and last year at AAA, he still had 60 innings, sub 4 ERA.
Yeah.
Really, really good numbers. His peripherals are great. He's basically never registered anything below 10 to 11 strikeouts per nine. Oh, man. Like his entire career, including college, 10.8 strikeouts per nine. Like that's elite strikeout stuff. He has that heater that gets up near 100. It's very tantalizing.
Yeah, I see.
It's
I
really
like it a lot. I like the idea of getting Meyer a lot. I guess I just maybe right now I don't love the idea of giving up that stuff. But like again, if spring training again, the tough part about this deal, if you don't do it now, it probably doesn't happen until July.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens in July?
Either.
Yeah. So, and by the time July rolls around, this deal probably can't happen either way because it's either his health didn't show up and now there's no way you trade for this for him, or he's dominant again. There's no way the Marlins take this for him. So you kind of do it now or you don't do it. I wouldn't hate it right now. I don't think it's necessarily the deal I would do because I think there's other things they could do instead of that I would like better. I like the thinking though. I kind of like because I was trying to, and I ended up going some different routes, going for another high ceiling, close to MLB ready arm that maybe wouldn't cost as much because you just don't have the certainty about what they're going to be. But they could pop off and be really good. So I like the thinking on that.
Yeah. And one more thing, I was reading earlier and it said that he and Trevor Rogers are both on track to be full participants in everything relating to spring training. So they should be ready. He says he's healthy. The Marlins say he's healthy. But until your own team gets their doctors, you have no idea what's going on anyway.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, again, definitely not a game changer, but he will be 25 soon. Like he'll be 25 before the season starts. So he's not young anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I could see the Marlins doing this for sure. I don't know if it's the one I would do. Maybe if like all these other things couldn't work out and it's like, hey, do you want to come into spring training with Max Meyer or not? Then I think I'm more open to it. But I think I'd rather explore other routes. And I feel like you probably feel the same on that. But
I agree. Yeah, I want an established starter so bad.
True that. Well, we've got a couple questions about other stuff. We'll get to those soon. We'll roll through the rest of ours. I know Sandy and I both it sounds like Sandy and I both have something for this. So I'll throw out my version of the deal first, and then Sandy can. I'm gonna go to the bullpen route here based on somewhat. Is this the same deal?
No, it's like really close. So I also used 8 million.
That's awesome. Okay, so if you haven't been keeping up with the Red Sox after life after Chris Sale, it sounds like they want to continue to move off of money to be able to add other salaries. So they're not trying to like tank. They just want to move salary off the books so they can go sign other guys instead. Kenley Jansen's a guy. Chris Martin's also been rumored out there, but I don't know. It feels like they'd rather hold on to him than Jansen. So I put out here, and I had a really hard time figuring out what is the player Boston would want in return, but then I kind of just landed on Richie Palacios because of the team control. So that's like, at the very least for them, it's like a utility guy who outfielder / second baseman off the bench who they don't have to pay anything to for a long time. So that's kind of where I landed on Palacios. I could see one of those AAA arms. I could see Andre Palante was someone I kind of messed with for a little bit, something like that. But then they eat $8 million of Kenley Jansen's salary. So the Cardinals get Kenley Jansen for 1 year, $8 million. That's below probably what he'd get on the open market right now. So it's kind of like a deal for them. And then they deal Richie Palacios, who I like, but I don't think any of us, it's what I would have said about Large Newbar, though, unfortunately, and that didn't age well on my end. When he first came up, I was like, all right, like, let's not act like he's the starting center fielder now. But okay, that would have been a good take back then. I don't think that's going to happen with Palacios. I don't think he's going to be the next Lars Newbar. I do think he could be a very, like, not quite a third outfield, not quite a starting outfielder, but maybe a little bit better than your fourth outfielder. So he's like kind of an in-betweener type guy. I really like him. But you've got so much position player depth. I just don't really see how he carves out a regular role. You definitely want him on your bench through the Cardinals. You don't need to move him. But if you can get Jansen for him, I really like the idea of it. So Palacios, you get $8 million in return. You get Kenley Jansen. You only pay him $8 million. I spelled his name wrong, but that's okay. Kenley Jansen, not Justin. Jasnin, what a guy. And then you've got Ryan Helsley, Giovanni Gallegos, and Kenley Jansen from the right side of back your bullpen. You got Jojo Romero from the left side, and then one of John King, Zach Thompson, something like that. I really like how the bullpen looks. And then you also get experience back there too. So Kenley Jansen obviously is not the prime Kenley Jansen anymore. His second half wasn't necessarily the best of the Red Sox, but they also kind of were falling apart. So I don't know how much I would take stock in that. I really like the idea of Jansen and the Cardinals, and it seems like something they would want to jump into. So, yeah, thoughts on Jansen, and I'll go and throw your deal on there while you're giving your thoughts.
I tweaked mine a little bit so that I
Okay.
wasn't also using $8 million. I was thinking like
you can use $8 million.
no,
Whatever you want to do.
I was also looking at, like a bullpen type of arm. I was thinking I don't want to move on from Romero, but I think Palante is a really interesting name. He definitely came up. But I've decided I'll do Burleson instead. I think he's a better player, at least in the eyes of the league. He has a couple of tools that Palacios doesn't have. He has power, and again, he hits for contact. And if you can tap into that, that's pretty elite. So I think Boston could be really interested in that. And then I just love Nick Dunn, so I want him to get a fair shot somewhere else because he's never going to play in St. Louis, which is really sad. And I figured Boston would be willing to give up a little more money to acquire Burleson because I think he's a better hitter than Palacios, and I think that's what moves the money. So I said 12, but I don't know. I think they're going to move on from Jansen. Hopefully it's soon, and hopefully the Cardinals are interested.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I played with Alec Burleson for a little bit too, and then I kind of landed on like it just feels like he's a little too valuable for Kenley Jansen.
I agree.
But if you're getting $12 million, that probably moves the needle, and so I like that idea a lot. Also, I just realized that I made it look like the Cardinals are paying Boston $8 million, which that would be horrible.
That'd be awful.
So yeah, that's not happening. The Red Sox would be paying $8 million of Kenley Jansen's contract. So I amended that in the chat. If you saw that, and we're like, what?
That's funny.
So yeah, I think the Jansen thing makes a lot of sense. I also wouldn't hate Alec Burleson in the deal, and especially like how you structured it. I could see a lot of legs to something like that. I don't know. Is there any other do you have any other reliever trades?
I mean, I played with some obviously, but nothing crazy. Like there's a ton of frameworks out there. You could go with a bunch of different routes. You could go to package like a Class A deal together. That's tough. I don't think the Cardinals can get that done. I think just like everybody else with a valuable piece, they come to the Cardinals and they say it's Gorman or Donovan or no deal. So I think it's a non-starter.
Agreed. Do you, outside of like, because if the Cardinals were a little bit more like they have their other starting pitcher right now, and you felt like they were a dominant bullpen away from being a contender, I might talk myself into overpaying or giving a lot of value for a Class A. But I think right now, unless it's like a deal like that where you get Kenley Jansen kind of on the cheap because they're trying to eat money, I don't really think I'm looking to trade for a bullpen arm at this point. I think that's kind of what the Tyler O'Neill trade took care of. And I think at this point you use money to go get that bullpen arm. Yeah. Because if you're not going to be signing a starting pitcher, then the money, that extra money should be used toward the bullpen, and they should be looking for those cost-controlled arms via trade. Absolutely. I don't really like the idea of like losing assets for a reliever and then making it harder to trade for a starter because you feel like you don't have a lot of assets left over. Yeah. So I kind of land on that. I'm going to. So do we feel like? I'm going to go ahead and put one more.
I've got one more as well. It's a little weirder than the other ones.
This one's super weird too. And I don't think anyone said something like this. And I really don't think it's possible, but I'm going to try and talk about how it could happen. The Cardinals get, send. The Cardinals get Shane McClanahan from the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Rays get Tink Hentz, Thomas Ajacey, Alec Burleson, and Zach Thompson.
I mean, I'm saying yes to that.
So here's why I think it could make sense. Shane McClanahan has 4 years of control right now. He's going to miss all 2024. That means he comes into 2025 off of elbow surgery, looking to reestablish himself. You think he's probably going to be an ace again, but who knows for sure.
Yeah.
And the Rays, we know they don't like to spend money, and they're going to be paying $5 million for him to do nothing next year. And then his contract's going to go up again for the next year. And then he's only got 2 years of control after that. Do I think this would get it done? I'm not quite sure, because I think if the Dodgers knew he was available, they would overbid this, knowing that they can wait on him too. I think this could be an opportunity that it's like you go after an elite talent and you take a little bit of risk here and you give up prospects and a couple guys who could make a difference right now, but maybe wouldn't necessarily be a huge loss for you, but could be Tampa Bay's gang.
Yeah.
And you eat the $5 million from Shane McClanahan this year, and you hope he's ready for 2025. And if he's not full self, then you at least hope in 2026 and 2027 he's his full self. And here, the two most significant pieces you're giving up here are two guys that probably aren't going to make a difference in the near future. Like Thomas Saggese could, but again, you've got redundancy with Brendan Donovan, Nolan Gorman, all that kind of stuff. Tink Hence, you're not really expecting to make a difference till 2025, 2026. So you're not like losing him right now. He wasn't going to do anything for you this year. And then if you're the Rays, you're getting 6, 12, 17, 23 years of control between the four guys for Shane McClanahan.
It's pretty good.
So I think there's that. And then Tyler Glasnow talked about it recently. He said like, and other people were in about this too. So it's not a secret, but it's interesting when a Rays pitcher comes out and says it. He's like, once we're 2 or 3 years removed from free agency, we're going to get traded. That's just how the Rays operate their pitching. And in 1 year, when Shane McClanahan comes back from injury, he will be 3 years away from free agency. Obviously, this is not ideal value for what the Rays probably hoped for in their mind when they're thinking long-term about this rotation. Yeah. Probably hope they could get more from Shane McClanahan in return, but he did have the elbow injury. They can't control that. Same thing Tyler Glasnow. Like they probably hope they could have gotten a king's ransom for him at some point, but then he kept getting injured. So I think this is something when, again, Alec Burleson can make an impact for the Rays this year. Zach Thompson can help with their pitching because they have so many guys hurt. And then, man, you give Tink Hence to the Rays to mess with. He could be a stud. Thomas Saggese could even make an impact for them this year. So off the wall trade. I know it doesn't help the Cardinals this year, but I think it's just too good of a player not to go after if he's available. What do you think?
I love it. I mean, if Shane McClanahan was available at all, absolutely. Like I'm pulling the trigger. I think he might have the best stuff of anybody in the game right now.
Yeah.
He is unreal. I love watching him pitch. I'm never going to compare anyone to prime Jacob deGrom because he's the best pitcher I think I've ever watched with my own two eyes. But McClanahan is very, very dominant. He's every bit as dominant at his best. I thought he was for sure going to win the Cy Young Award before he went down. He's special. Yep. And if that's a guy you can get on the Cardinals, absolutely. And if it doesn't cost you Nolan Gorman and Brendan Donovan, like, yeah, I'm doing that in a heartbeat. There's no chance I'm not doing that. I absolutely love the deal. I would absolutely do that.
Yeah. Again, I struggle to know how much the Rays would be interested, but then the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, I don't know how they can ask for Nolan Gorman and Brendan Donovan right now because
no, they can't.
He's not pitching this year. And then even though you think he's going to be back to himself in 2025, you don't know that for sure. And even if you can guarantee he's going to be back to himself in 2026, 2027, then it's only 2 years of control left. And he's getting paid 15 to 20 million at that point in arbitration. So I just think like, I don't know. I think it can make a lot of sense here. And then I just think like the Rays have so many different guys they're thinking about moving right now that it kind of seems like they're trying to like turn the table on this old core into a new core. And you could see in 2025, 2026, Tink Hence being toward the top of their rotation, Thomas Saggese being one of their best hitters, Alec Burleson being a very important piece, and Zach Thompson being a very important piece. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Rays to just get so much in return for him right now. And outside of like the Dodgers, I don't really know. Maybe the Orioles or Reds would be interested in this. I don't really know what teams would be willing to give up a lot for McClanahan right now because he can't do anything for them this year. Yeah. Again, I don't know if the Cardinals would actually want to do that either, but if I'm the Cardinals and there's any chance to get Shane McClanahan, even if it's a year delayed, I'm in. And especially in this kind of package where I'm not really giving up like people who are directly impacting my winning right now.
Yeah, I think like the Cardinals, if they don't have these guys, it probably hurts to not have Saggese coming off the bench later this year. It probably hurts to not have Thompson in the bullpen. But you can go sign a left-handed reliever. And you can go sign a bench bat. And he's probably not going to be Saggese, and he definitely doesn't have the promise of Saggese, but that's okay because if McClanahan's in the fold for 2025, I'm very, very excited.
Yeah. So I thought it was kind of off the walls, kind of crazy. I know.
I'm pulling the trigger. I'd do it.
I would too. Heartbeat. I'm a little bit scared about the Tink Hence thing, and I'm a little bit scared about Thomas Saggese because But Shane McClanahan, there's no way. I can't not do that. So anyways, I don't know if I don't think John Mozeliak watches this, but if you are, I just gave you a little idea to throw at the Rays. Maybe they haven't thought of it yet. So, are you ready for your 3-teamer? Not to your teaser
this
at all.
is it. I've got a 3-team deal coming in. It's a little wild.
This is wild.
About this for a while. Okay.
So we're going to throw this out there. And again, if you guys have trade ideas or even just want to be like, hey, what would you give up for this player? Throw them in the chat because we'll move into that here soon. But Sandy's got one more for you. And it's 3-teamer, which I think I don't think it's happened in baseball before. I can't think of the last 3-team deal.
3 teams are like all over.
Oh,
the Mookie Betts trade was a 3-team deal.
True. And wasn't the Edwin Jackson a 3-team deal when the Cardinals got him? Yeah. So it doesn't happen very often, but it happens.
4 teams every once in a while. Those are really rare, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. I've got, it's a little confusing. I'm going to try to explain it. It's going to be really tough for audio listeners, but bear with me.
Yeah.
So St. Louis is getting Alek Manoah and Clayton Beeter. Manoah, obviously, his value's low right now. And Beeter is a prospect in the Yankees system that I really like. He hasn't gotten a ton of attention because guys like Drew Thorpe have kind of been sucking all of it up. I think he'd be really good. He's not a top 100 prospect. He's probably like a 4 at his best, but he's a really good 4. And it would allow you to make other moves that I've talked about, like moving on from Robersa. Okay, so Toronto is getting Sean Boyle. He's a pitcher at the bottom of New York's farm system. He's probably going to be a 5. He's very similar to Clark Schmidt in terms of ceiling. I don't hate him. I don't love him. He's kind of boring. Richie Palacios is also going to Toronto. They need a little bit of outfield help. They really struggled after losing Teoscar Hernandez. I'm not sure how much he actually helps them, but he's an interesting spark pluggy player. And then Zach Thompson is somebody who, like, if at the end of the year we're saying that Thompson had a better season than Manoah, I don't think anyone's shocked. New York is getting that outfield help that they still need in Dylan Carlson. I know that they've patched it up, but I really do think they could use a little bit more out there. They can always use the help.
Stan misses a lot of games, so
it's true. Exactly. You can't rely on him. And then Luken Baker. He's very similar to the Luke Voigt trade that New York made, and that worked out really well for them, at least in the short term. I could totally see them taking a chance on a guy who hits nukes, especially with the short porch. So just the Cardinals perspective here, you're trading away Palacios, Thompson, Carlson, and Baker, and you're bringing in 2 pitchers that I think could be really good, Manoah and Beeter. And I think Beeter's ceiling is probably closer to a 3 than a 4. So he at some point could be a very good mid-rotation arm. Like if he's Steven Matz, nothing to complain about. That'd be a great ad. So I think the Cardinals could do this. I think most of these teams would be interesting. Yeah, Talik's right. The Contreras trade was a 3-team deal, which was ridiculous because the Brewers just got him for free. The Braves just gave him to the Brewers. It was so stupid.
So dumb.
But I think this is something that could work. Maybe New York would want a little more for Beeter, but honestly, I don't think so. I think Carlson is worth enough. If anyone feels shorthanded, it's probably Toronto. But what is Manoah worth? He got shelled in the FCL last year, and I don't think he wants to be there anymore. I don't think he likes Toronto right now.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. Okay. I'll ask you as we get into it. I think for Toronto's perspective, it's kind of like there's probably more to lose here than there is to gain trading Manoah because it's like, I mean, I'm going to have to ask it kind of, and we can answer it. I really like Zach Thompson, and I'm interested in what we both think his ceiling is.
Yeah.
But it's lower than Manoah's ceiling.
Absolutely.
But his floor is much higher.
Yes.
But in Palacios, 6 years of control. So I don't know. Maybe that's something that's interesting. But I think Manoah comes off, and even if he's a number 3 type starter with a lot of control, that's a lot to give up. That's painful to give up. Like looking back, if they look back at this.
But how much do you want to be in Toronto? Like the personal stuff last year was bad. He just left. Like he disappeared in the middle of the season. Edwin Munoz or Yairo Munoz style. Like you can't do that.
And most people would understand they trade him. So it's not like it's like, what are you doing? Why'd you just trade Alek Manoah? It's like, oh, okay. And then retroactively, like, sometimes these deals don't work out. So change of scenery. It's probably not going to work out for him in Toronto. It could work out for him somewhere else. So I like it.
Maybe they ask for a more, maybe like Burleson or something. I've seen a lot of Burleson for Manoah framework too.
Yeah, I actually think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's one that I think then I almost start to say the Cardinals have more to lose there because there's certainty without Burleson's bat. But again, they have such a surplus that it's kind of, I just feel like you got to do it at this point. So I like that framework. But again, looking at all this, I love the idea of getting Clayton Beeter. He's just got really good stuff. And so it's like, kind of like Takoro. He's probably less. I don't know. I think people would value him less than Takoro Roby, but it's in that kind of vein where most people probably don't think he's gonna be a 1-2 at least talent evaluators, but he's
Yeah.
gonna be like a really good 3 with a lot of good strikeout stuff. So that's fun to watch. I think Beater ceiling could be that, or he could be a really good bullpen arm. So that's a really good get for the Cardinals.
I would say it's like this: Gordon Graceffo is to Tink Hence as Clayton Beater is to Takoro Roby, right? Where it's like similar type of arm, slightly lower ceiling, maybe a higher floor though because of the injury stuff. So
yeah, and Beater had crazy strikeout stuff. So
it's really good.
I really like the framework here. Something that just a side note, and it's maybe an opportunity here for us to plug our Discord, which if you don't know about that already, someone in our Discord just want to make sure we all remember that the Blue Jays brought back Kevin Kiermaier, so maybe they wouldn't be interested in Richie Palacios, but I still think they would want. I still think Palacios would make sense off the bench there. If you're interested in being in our Discord, Sandy, myself, and Andrew talk with our members all the time in there. So you can I'll throw the pinned message, or actually it's already pinned in the comments on YouTube. If you want to join our membership program, it's $1 a month just to be in the Discord and some other perks as well. You get priority in our live stream chats as well. But then there's other tiers as well that revolve around us writing a story on Redbird Rants, doing a breakdown on whatever you want for us on there. Yeah. We do member only streams. We're going to stream Cardinal games next year and watch it with people once a month. So there's a bunch of different things. You can look at all the perks on that there. But if you want to join, you can click the link on the pinned message in the chat. And it's a way to join our membership program. It's really awesome, but we love our members, and there's some really awesome stuff going on, and we just are consistently continuing the conversation in there. So you don't have to wait for another live stream. You don't have to wait for another video, and you can interact with us directly. So
it's super fun. One more thing to add real quick too, something I love about it. We're building out infrastructure that doesn't exist right now for Cards fans to come together and just talk. It's really cool. I love when members that, aren't me and Josh and Andrew come together to chat about trade proposals and stuff. Like, this is a great way for Cardinals fans to get together. And so that's something that's really cool. I'm really excited about it. And the more people that are in there, honestly, the more valuable it becomes. If there's 100 people in there, it's worth way more than $1 a month. If there's just constant chatter, and that's something that's really exciting.
Yeah, and we've already got a growing group in there, so it's fun so far, but we're hoping it grows. And like you said, it's like, sure, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube comments can kind of do that, but it's not the same as messaging back and forth, and we have different channels and different group type things. So there's a lot more there, and there's more of a buy. And you've got, like, you're not just getting the random trolls in there necessarily. You're getting people who are having well thought out conversations about things, which is what I enjoy. When if you hop on a Twitter thread, sure, there's some people who great to talk to, and others it's just like, I don't know what's happening here. So that's another reason. If you want more information about that, message us. But otherwise, you can check out the information there. If you're in our Discord and you're listening right now, maybe give a hey and maybe tell people why you joined, because it's a really awesome thing. So other than that, if you guys have trades you want to throw out there, we'll take some. One comment I did see. Actually, I want to cover something. We preemptively let our Discord people know about things we're going to be talking about. So if you're listening to audio right now, if you can't see the pinned chat because you're not watching live, you can go, or you're watching this later, you can go to our YouTube channel. Usually you need to do the browser version of it, and you can click on the membership program. But someone asked about, can we talk about the Cardinals pitching development? And can we talk about what needs to happen with all that going forward? I think we're going to kind of save that for next week, because we're going to have Kareem on, who many of you know from Twitter, who talks about Cardinals prospect, and he's just awesome at what he does. Sometimes he's in the live stream chat, so you might be able to chat with him on that. But anyways, I think he'll have more to say on what the changes need to look like, and he'll be able to talk about what Cardinal prospects right now are maybe embodying that changes and how they're doing as a whole with that right now. But yeah, so we'll save that for next week. I can't remember who said in the Discord, but that was a great thought, and that's something we're going to talk more about. So I'm just looking in the chat right now about things people said about. So someone asked about what would it take for Bieber, what would you give up for Bieber? And then Cy put out Michael McGreevy, Alec Burleson, Pete Hansen for Shane Bieber. He said it's two pitchers that Cleveland can develop, and an unpolished bat with Burleson.
I think that's probably too much right now, frankly. I'm pretty high on McGreevy compared to most people. I think he's just
really
Hudson 2.0. I put an article out the other day at Redbird Rants. I think like McGreevy is super similar to Hudson, except he doesn't walk anybody, which is Hudson's biggest problem. So you have Dakota Hudson, who's a guy who like when he was controlling his walks, keeping him under 4 per 9, he was pretty good. Like if you look at Dakota Hudson, and he had a great defense behind him, but like he has a sub 4 ERA for his career. That's kind of insane, you know? It's pretty surprising for most people who dog on him a lot. And I think McGreevy can be that guy too. And McGreevy's a guy who it's not always going to look pretty, but he doesn't walk anybody. And he's going to get results. And he has slightly better strikeout stuff than Hudson. His slider is better than any of Hudson's secondary offerings. I think there's a world in which he's a really good 4, especially if he adds a tick or 2 to his fastball. He could be really decent.
Yeah, I think like when it comes to Dakota Hudson, you look back and you look at his FIP year to year, it's like
it's terrible.
3.86, 4.93, 4.50, 2.48 in 2021, but that was eight innings, so not really. 4.34 and then 5.06. Like all the underlying metrics continue to say his success is not sustainable. So I think he kept doing it. I just think it started to like stop working and people started figuring him out, and they would take the walks and they'd mash on his sinker and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not as high on McGreevy as you. I think at best he's a 5, and if he works out to be a 5, then you're excited about it. And maybe he's a ground ball pitcher out of the bullpen at this point. I just don't see the ceiling with him. But again, maybe he's got plenty of time to change some things up and develop more. So I guess I think this makes sense on paper. I think it's like I said earlier, some of the other deals, I might do it if there's nothing else available to me. But I don't think I'm really excited to pull the trigger about that. It's like not that I don't feel necessarily, I'm not like scared about giving up Alec Burleson and Michael McGreevy. Alec Burleson, I kind of am.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna be very productive.
Better pitcher too, I think.
Yeah, I think you could package him with other stuff for something better, which is also part of the reason I don't want to do it, because maybe you could get again Cease, Luzardo, someone like that later, and he can't be the centerpiece, but he could be the 3rd or 4th piece that you need, and now you don't have him to throw into that deal. Yeah, so if you're a person that thinks Bieber is going to bounce back next year, this deal makes a lot of sense. I'm not necessarily in that camp. I don't think I think it could happen, but I'm not banking on it. So I'm not a huge on this, but I want to hate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't like be screaming at the top of my lungs that it was a terrible deal if the Cardinals made it. And I'd be excited to see Shane Bieber pitch, of course. Yeah. He's a big name, and he's a guy that's won a Cy Young before. And at one point, I really would have said he's a top 3 pitcher in baseball. He was awesome. And he had a couple really, really good seasons. But he just isn't the same, and I think everyone knows that right now. And then the contract. The contract's the scary part for me. Do you want to take on like $14 million for Shane Bieber right now? Yeah. Like I don't.
Yeah. Till you come back to get to your question, because it's really interesting. But Steve Wright makes a good point. So for our listeners, there is Dakota Hudson before Tommy John, and there's Dakota Hudson after Tommy John. That's true. Like
he lost a tick on his fastball. He got a lot worse. He loses any velocity, and he can't sneak it past to anybody. Yeah, and it's over.
So I think that's a fair point. So maybe McGreevy doesn't have an major elbow surgery. Maybe he has a little bit better of a Cardinal career than Dakota Hudson could have. I just think like also there's a ton of Cardinals pitching that would take over McGreevy right now.
I
agree
with that.
Roby, Hence, Jerpy,
Offenstein,
Robersa, Rockich, Adele.
Yeah.
I feel like I missed someone a bit. I don't know if I said Graceffo.
Yeah, there's a lot of good names. But the problem about all of those guys is none of them are ready right now. And I think McGreevy could pitch right now.
Yeah, I think my counter would then be, well, I've got Zach Thompson and Matthew Liberatore right now. And if I have to go down to Michael McGreevy, then I think things went really awry this year. So I don't know. I see all sides of it. I don't think any of us are holding on McGreevy with a close
not at all.
I'm not wanting to hand him over for nothing, but I'm also not really scared to give him up at all. So
I feel that.
Talik, that's a really interesting question. How would you guys felt if the Cardinals got William Contreras last offseason instead of Wilson? Sandy, I mean, my quick thoughts are if they got him with the Brewers gave up, then I'm all in, obviously. Yeah. But assuming the Braves would have wanted a lot more, I'm still, I feel like I've kind of wavered on Wilson Contreras at times, but I've mostly been all in on it. And I'm all in on it. And you've got Ivan Herrera long-term too. So I'm not mad they didn't get William Contreras, because I just don't think there's any shot they got him for the value that the Brewers did, because that would have required you trading with the A's directly, or not the A's, the Braves directly. Maybe if 3-team deal works out, but I don't think they're giving the Cardinals William Contreras. I just don't think they were going to do that, at least for the value they got in return.
I mean,
so
to be fair, they're basically the same exact player offensively.
yeah,
So
but William Contreras is really good defensively.
Yeah, he's a lot better defensively.
So
it's crazy.
And obviously the contract is a lot cheaper right now. So there's that pro where you're not paying Wilson Contreras $18.5 million right now if you have William Contreras. So
yeah,
it's like it was a masterclass by the Brewers when they got him. So in the moment, I was
ridiculous.
Really
it was the A's being ridiculous. I'm still mad about this. The fact that the A's call the Cardinals and they demand Lars Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan for Sean Murphy. And then they go to the Braves and they literally take nothing. Esteury Ruiz was the big part of that deal. No, that makes zero sense. You're talking to the Cardinals and you're asking for guys with like established power tools, established on base tools, and then you go and you take a guy who's fast. I will never understand it. It was ridiculous. It was the peak of terrible negotiating. And I'll shout it from the rooftops forever. The A's screwed up and the Braves and Brewers got to reap the benefits. And all of a sudden the Braves were sitting there and they didn't need Contreras and they just kind of dumped him on the Brewers. And yeah, he's really, really good. It really stinks. It's honestly ridiculous that was even able to happen. So this makes me so mad when I think about it.
Yeah, I wish it would have happened for the Cardinals, but it didn't. Like it wasn't gonna happen. I mean, maybe I'm thinking going back, if the A's can get Sean or the Braves can get Sean Murphy, maybe they don't care if the Cardinals get William Contreras. But I don't know. I don't know if Alex Anthopoulos would have wanted that to happen. So, anyways, it's an interesting thing. But yeah. I don't think there's really many other trades in the chat right now. So I think we can start to wrap this up a little bit. So those are some of our trade ideas that we had.
I had one earlier. Someone put this out on Twitter.
Okay.
I think it was Necro. I think.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact Twitter handle. But he said he was interested in a Class A deal where he was moving Helsley. I believe the exact framework was Helsley, Kloffenstein, and Cho for Class A.
Okay.
The consensus in the thread was something along the lines of that's a deal that neither team takes.
Yeah.
Which means it's probably a pretty good deal. I was interested. I think if you're the Cardinals, though, if you're moving on from Helsley to get another reliever, it's kind of a lateral move.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just don't know if you give up Cho with the high ceiling, but also the extra control that you get from Class A. And I think Class A is more durable than Ryan Helsley. So maybe it's still an upgrade. You can live without Kloffenstein for sure. You probably can live without Cho, but can Cleveland live without a guy like Cho? They really need some high ceiling position player talent. I thought it was a really interesting deal. I thought it was a really good one.
Yeah, I think like the main win, I think for me is the long-term value because you're getting, I don't know how many more extra years you're getting, but it's probably at least 2 years extra of control if you have Class A versus
because arbitration is locked in.
Yeah. So I see that, but I just and losing, you said Kloffenstein and Cho.
Yeah.
And I mean, Cho's one of those guys I think like could shoot up the Cardinals prospect board this next year.
Absolutely.
So it could look really bad later.
His bat speed is crazy.
So I think I'm out on it just because if I'm trading for a reliever, I'm adding to Helsley. I'm not giving up Helsley.
That's my thing.
Again, he just looks so good when he came back from injury, and we saw what happened. And like you also fall into the same trap again, where it's like if Class A's batter gets hurt, then your bullpen's really thin again. So
you need multiple good relievers, right? Like you got to build a bullpen. You can't just have a closer.
Yeah. So I think if you're thinking trying to extract as much long-term value out of that closer spot, it makes sense and it's an upgrade. But I don't know. I don't really think it's worth giving up the 2 extra prospects to upgrade from Helsley to Class A. Because I mean, in any individual season, Helsley could be better than Class A. So
absolutely, and he was 2 years ago. Was, but also last year, Class A was a fair bit better than Helsley because of the injury.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. I don't think the Cardinals need to do it.
Therein lies the problem with creating trades. Like we have no idea how teams value players, but the other problem is you might come up with something where the value is really fair, right? Like, but it just doesn't address a team's needs and it doesn't address a team's wants. And it's like maybe the Cardinals have something where they're like, well, we like Clase, but we don't care for him as much as someone else might.
Yeah. Cleveland, who's another member here, I'm going to throw him on here, just threw out an idea that he saw. He talked to a guy who thought the Cards should trade Victor Scott and Alec Burleson for Emmanuel Clase. My first thought is Victor Scott's untouchable to me, so I wouldn't do it. But then when I think about it a little bit harder, it's like if you're only giving up Scott and Burleson, maybe. But I just think that I don't know. Maybe it's just my bias here, but I'm not giving Victor Scott. So
I don't think so either. And if you do that, you have to go acquire a center fielder. And with a guy like Kiermaier off the market, that's really tough.
Well, you could use Edman and Carlson.
I hate the idea of Tommy Edman in center field.
Really? I can't remember. Maybe it was Brandon Kiley on 101 ESPN or someone like that. But I think we massively underrated how good Edman was defensively out there. And I kind of wonder if he's not bouncing around the diamond as much anymore. And I don't know, maybe his bat. If you get a league average bat with borderline elite defense in center field, that's great. So I not great as in like a top 10 center fielder, but he's probably league average center fielder, if not slightly better. So that's where and then Carlson again, like he's another one of those what if guys. He could be just what he is right now, or he could finally hit that potential we thought he could, and then he's a great center fielder. So I just think the sky is the limit for Victor Scott. Not necessarily. I don't think he could be a superstar necessarily, but I think he could be a really, really, really good player. And I put in my bold predictions that he's going to finish top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting. Again, it's bold. I meant to be bold. So some people are saying I just think especially if he gets a high number of steals and he's in the conversation for a Gold Glove, like that stuff gets you on award radar. So
I like it.
Anyways, I like the idea of it. And then Cleveland, you also followed up with, is Cho able to play center field? So. And he's probably more of a corner outfielder, but he plays center field a little bit right now, I think.
Yeah, but he's a little big to stick in center field. They have questions about whether the speed will go. Probably. He feels more like a big power hitter at some point in his career. Not necessarily like a typical slugger, but he's just got a big frame to play center. Yeah. But I like Cho. I love Cho. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I think this is a helpful segue as we close out here as well. We're going to be, again, next week. At least the plan right now is to have Kareem on. You follow him on Twitter. Kareem Season just puts out some of the best stuff on Cardinals prospects right now. So highly recommend checking him out on Twitter before the episode. But if you want to be able to maybe influence some of the conversation we have with him about prospects, join our membership program. Again, if you're in YouTube right now, it's pinned in the comment section. If you're not watching the stream right now, or you're listening on audio platforms, you can go to our YouTube channel. Usually it works best if you go on a computer to try and join a membership program. And right next to the subscribe button, there should be join. There's 3 tiers. The lowest tier is $1 a month, which gets you access to our Discord and priority chats in our chats. But again, if you want to be able to talk about a certain prospect, like I think Cho is someone we're going to ask him about. I'm sure we'll ask him about Victor Scott and other guys like that. And he's just got incredible stuff. And then I'm also interested. I want him to help break down a little bit of some of this advanced analytics stuff and some of the stuff that people are looking for when it comes to bat speed or Z contact or sweet spot and all this kind of stuff that maybe the average person doesn't really fully understand what's the big deal about that, but goes into a lot of the talent evaluation we see these days. And so again, really excited to have Kareem on. If you want to talk prospects, you want to throw some stuff out there with us, to join our membership program in our Discord. And we'd love to have you in there. Otherwise though, we're really excited for next Sunday's pod. Sandy, anything you got off the close here?
I think that's most it. Just super excited to talk to Kareem. Love when he's in the chat. Seriously, like the content he puts out should be behind a paywall. It's a wonder that it's not.
Yeah.
It's elite level analysis. So
yeah. And again, if you're watching right now or you're watching later, please subscribe. It helps us out a ton. Yes. Even if you're not gonna watch all of our episodes, at least you know what's going on. We have interviews with different players, different media, different people who are experts in prospects or other areas. I'm sure at some points we're gonna bring on people from maybe other clubs, like to talk about how the Cubs are doing and more. We have upcoming series. Like we just will have awesome Cardinal content coming up, and so really excited about it. So if you want to stay up to date with what we got going on, click subscribe on there. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. So those are other social media platforms you can keep up with us. But again, the membership program is the best way to keep up with us on a day-to-day basis because you get direct access to everything we're doing. So thank you so much for watching. We're always blown away by the support, and we're just so thankful that you guys would watch. And it's in January right now. We're still 2 months away from spring training, and you're talking Cardinals baseball with us. We love Cardinal baseball. We love you guys. And so thanks for being a part of this community. And we'll see you next week, barring an emergency pod, which I wouldn't mind.
I would be excited.
I'd be excited. We kept having a string of those. We haven't had to do it recently, but if somehow a big trade happens or signing happens, we'll be there to cover it. Otherwise, we'll see you next Sunday with Kareem. Thanks again for joining. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join the membership program if you want to get some deeper access with us. And we'll see you next week.